Hey, this is Rob Anspach, and welcome back to another edition of E-Heroes. For those keeping count, this is episode 245, and today we're going to talk about moving the needle. And I have a great guest. His name is Jason Clough, and he's a big Disney fan, just like I am. So we're probably going to pepper this podcast with a lot of Disney talk. So welcome, Jason, and thanks for being here.
Rob, thanks for being the guy who does the intros for me. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, I don't work on the intros. It just happens. So it's
I mean, now
some
I feel like
people
I have to
some people
insert
give me
some
these
references to Disney all of a sudden. So get ready.
some people give me these big 3-page bios they want me to read, and I'm like, good Lord, that's going to take up the whole podcast. How about I just shorten it to 15 words? And they're like, no, you can't do that.
It's like the Haunted Mansion. Kindly step into the middle of the room. And now you're all together and we're in this room. Now, I don't know where we're going to go from here. Maybe the room will start stretching. I'm not sure, but you never know.
I went to the took a VIP tour, and that's the keys to the kingdom, and they take you down to the tunnel, and they do all. But we were able to bypass the lines, and they took us into the haunted mansion, and we're standing there,
Mm.
and that intro, that very first room where the room stretches, it didn't stretch. It was broken. What the hell?
Ruining the magic.
I know it's
Well,
so
it's weird because in Florida, it's not an elevator, yet the one in Disneyland is an elevator, all because of space and size and land usage. It's yeah.
the I've been to Disney so many times. I was in Disney during COVID. I was in Disney after COVID. Um, and I still don't think Disney is back to normal. Um,
No,
there's still
no.
a lot of things that they need to work on. I think cleanliness is one of them. I think that the staff, although they're trying, I still think that they're working too long of hours. By the time the end of the day, they're as cranky as the guests.
I don't necessarily see the pre-COVID Disney back yet.
Hmm.
But when we think about, moving a needle, people oftentimes thinks of it just as solely in terms of data. I think they've made significant strides to move the needle back to sort of that pre-COVID period. Are we there yet? No. I think part of it is fundamentally as a society, we've all changed.
Right.
I think our priorities have changed, right? I mean, if you look at businesses who have had to move that needle during COVID, during supply chain shortages, and if you think about it, the store end caps that we all used to go and shop at
Hmm.
and discover new brands, a lot of that moved online. A lot of that was already in like the Amazons of the world that were, priming at your house. But think about the stuff that you bought online pre-COVID, right? It's probably smaller, I'll say less costly. Now people are shipping in desks, rugs, furniture, right? So all of that has changed the dynamic of the consumer and how they show up to discover new brands. And that has required marketing teams to shift their strategies like never before,
Hmm.
no differently than I think Disney is now having to adjust to a different climate. I think as you and I have talked over the last number of weeks, I'm a big fan of prioritizing happiness
Hmm.
to promote that sort of positivity. And I think when you do that, you do start to see empathy, you start to see compassion come through. But I think, it's hard, right? People want to live where they think the puck is going, to put in a hockey reference. It's the skate where the puck is. And I guess my thing is, I was just watching one of your other videos this past week, and you'd really dialed it into really be present.
Hmm.
And I think we as a society have to be present everywhere we go. And that means that even whether it's at work or at the parks, when we're in that stretching room that doesn't stretch at that moment, that we are embracing sort of that in
Right.
the moment thing. And sometimes we get so caught up in our devices that we lose sight of that.
Well, and speaking of devices, we all love these things, and they're great for production, they're great for work, they're great for communicating. But just like Disney, when we're at Disney or when we're at a restaurant or anywhere where we want to be in the moment, these are a distraction. And
Yeah.
and now Disney's like, hey, we got this new great thing. It's going to help make your job easier to navigate the parks. It's called Genie Plus. It's a pain in the ass, is what it is. But you got to pay extra for it. And the rides that you thought you used to be able to get for free under Lightning Lane now cost more money. But you got to monitor your phone all day to make sure you don't miss your time to get on. No, make it simpler. That's you know, and
Well, to use your point, to be present, and full transparency, I've never used Genie Plus. I'm an annual pass holder. I go to the parks often, and I try really hard. Am I perfect at it? No, but I try really hard to be present.
right.
You look around and you have to sort of live almost vicariously through the experiences that they're creating as you walk under the railroad tracks and into the park.
Mm-hmm.
um, but if you're truly going to embrace moving that needle, you have to think about it in different ways. And part of it for me when I go to the parks is how am I going to move the needle in a particular, either friendship that I'm going there with, right? Because if I'm on my phone or I'm distracted, I'm not really in that moment. Then I'm kind of half in, half out.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you a really just quick story that I think is really profound for me is that, we were getting ready last year and we were going to be going down over the holidays. And I had messaged one of our friends and I said, hey, what are you doing for the holidays? And they were like, oh, I don't really know. And I was like, you should come to Disney.
Mm-hmm.
They don't live in the same city as us, right? So we only get to see them periodically. But it was a concerted effort on our part, on my wife and I's part, to move the needle in that relationship, to think of it more strategically and say, how do I grow this into something more? How do I get to see this person more? And how do I make memories that both my wife and I can hold on to, that they can hold on to? Disney just happens to be that place for me where that sort of happens.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way in which, as a kid, my grandmother, my aunt, my mom, they all brought me to Disney, and I remember holding on to Mickey's hand and never letting go, because they had taken the photo, and they're like, "Okay," and I'm like, "No, I want Mickey comes home with me, right?" And they're like, "No." I'm like, "Oh," but it's those memories, it's that being in that moment thing, and I think too often we try and move too many needles.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a number of examples of that out in the world. But as I was telling you right before we jumped on here to record this, I said, it's almost like Apple. I'm a big Apple fan. I love their products, but what I really love about them is the simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
This idea that we could create something so simple is actually not simple at all. And if you were to put all of their products together, they fit on a table. But that's because they've said no to a lot of things. And I think going to the parks and putting the phone away and embracing that in the moment thing is one of those things where you dial in and you say, look, we're going to focus on this.
Right.
And that means though, and I'm a big analogy guy, but it's like in a parade where you see the horses pulling the carriages. The horses have blinders on.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is so that they don't get distracted, so that they can be present, so that they can just focus on now not moving the needle, but moving the carriage forward.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I started to do when we went to Disney was to lower my expectations because I had all these things that I wanted to do, wanted to accomplish while we were at the park. But if it's a busy day and the lines are 3 hours long, there's no way you're going to get all these rides in. But by lowering my expectation and saying, like, while I'm in the park, let's just enjoy the time. What rides we get on, we get on. And the thing is, as I can appreciate the people that go there once in a lifetime and they want to get stuff done, but they got 4 days and they're like, oh, I gotta hop to this park and this park and this. Just slow down because you're not going to get it all done. And I think in the park they actually create stuff to slow you down, but you're not looking and you're just wanting to go full force. There are elements in the park like the steamboat, like uh, Tom Sawyer Island, and those are places
The
where I like to.
train.
The train, yeah, and even the people mover are designed just to slow life down a little bit, so you can take a breather.
Yeah.
A lot of people bypass those because no, I don't want to do that. I got to go to Space Mountain. I got to go to Tron. I got to the other parks, Flight of Passage and Rise of Resistance and all. Just slow down.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it through the entrepreneurial lens, right? Most entrepreneurs will come up with a big idea and then they want to conquer that idea overnight. And it's hard work.
Right.
And there again, you're not going to do it all in one day. Just like the parks, you can't clear it all in one day. You probably even realistically can't clear it in a week if you truly wanted to encapsulate everything that you could possibly do. I mean, I've gone there dozens and dozens of times. And in the past year alone, we've done a VIP tour. We've done the Keys to the Kingdom tour. And then I just learned about a behind the seeds tour over at Epcot.
Yeah.
Walt's apartment tour out in Disneyland. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to do that. But it's interesting. Like, so again, for me in moving the needle, as a kid, I was very fortunate, very, very fortunate. I don't take that for granted at all, that my family afforded us the opportunity to go to the parks often. And to talk about how the consumer has changed and how even I've changed. Right on the backside of COVID, I called up my aunt one day and I said, "We're going to go to Disney." She lives up north. I'm obviously down in North Carolina, and I said, "We're going to go to the parks. We're going to go to Disney." And she had kind of like almost dilly-dallied a little bit and waffled on it. And I said, "No, we're going." Mm-hmm. Now, the quick backstory on that and why I was so adamant about that was because my grandmother on my father's side, who is now since passed away, when I graduated high school, she gave every grandchild the opportunity to pick anywhere in the world to do any trip that you wanted with her. So it was just the two of you. I never chose one. Mm. And I didn't because I prioritized college and then immediately got hired out of college into my first job. So I moved a needle on my career at the expense of now having had her pass away, being the only grandchild that did not have the memory of a trip with her. Mm-hmm. That's on me. But that's where I start to say, no matter what aspect of your life you look at, you have to prioritize something. You can't do it all, because if everything's the priority, think of it like an ATM. My dad has this analogy, and I've held it close, he says, life is like an ATM. If every friendship, everything you have to do is more than just what it is, that it's if you think about it as like money coming in and going out, but now it's time going in and coming out, investment going in and out, whether it's in friendships or whatever. What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. Just keep giving it out? Because eventually the machine's going to run out of money. Eventually you're going to run out of energy. You're going to run out of time. I ran out of time. Mm-hmm. So I said to my aunt, "We're going." because I don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. I don't know what thing is going to happen. But you know what? This thing shut down our global economy for now 2.5 years. And that's memory time that I'm not going to get back.
Mm-hmm.
So we went. And to your point, we didn't ride every ride.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, we didn't hit everything. What we did was end our night at the raceway, that little track thing, which I can never steer correctly for the life of me.
Good thing they
Thank
have the
gosh
metal.
it's on a track. I'm trying to steer it. I think it's oversensitive because I'm just bumping back and forth. We are laughing so hard, we're crying, and it was the last ride of the night. Because the last ride of the time that we had ever gone to Disney was always at that speedway. And now I get to sit here today and say to you, I didn't prioritize the right things then. I am now trying to course correct, to use the speedway race sort of analogy, and make sure that I am prioritizing things very differently, that I'm prioritizing the happiness of myself, of those around me. But I guess, I'll end by saying this. One of my former bosses, this guy's like a mentor to me. He's amazing. On my last day, and he was tough. He was like those college professors that you're like, wow, he or she was really tough, but you really loved working in that class. This was one of them. On the last day when I had resigned, I had moved into my new role and my new job, he had sent me an email that I still have to this day. And he said, quote, I believe that the single greatest compliment that one can be paid in life is to be told that they've made a difference. And if you think about that, that's actually moving the needle. It means, did you do something? Did it matter? I made the wrong decision back then around picking the trip with my grandmother, and I was just like, no, we're not going to do that again. We're gonna prioritize the things that matter.
So when you're not going to Disney, what do you do every day?
I am obsessed with our lawn. I'm fascinated by trying to believe that somehow I can get golf course quality grass at the house. But I'm also very much into the music scene. So in high school, I was in the high school band, in the brass section, did the jazz ensemble and all of those things, did marching band, and actually performed at Disney, believe it or not. But for me, so now that sort of bleeds itself out into, going to concerts, and experiencing sort of live music that I think is just fascinating. I wish somehow I was just telling somebody last night, I was like, I wish I could go back and listen to and sit in an audience of somebody like a Bing Crosby or a Frank Sinatra. Just because I think there's just such a different space. I was a wedding DJ when I was growing up, so that music is still sort of that connective sort of tissue for me. And then lastly, I think, that sort of same connection that connects the people that love music, that emulate the sort of ways that it brings people together. Broadway. I absolutely love Broadway shows. I think what they do is incredible. I think it takes talent. And in each of these ways, it requires people to show up and to present something that candidly, 4 or 5 years ago, even being in the data industry, I was not the presenter. I was the guy behind the scenes. I was the guy in the data doing all the fun stuff. But then when it came time to present, that was somebody else. Until our marketing director at the time had figured out that, through either Zooms or meetings like this, she candidly said to me, she goes, Jason, why are you not presenting this? You've built this report. You've built all of this. Like, why won't you do it? And I'm like, I'm not that type of guy. I'm introvert. I'm much more behind the scenes. And Little did I know that at the time, my CEO, which was at a startup company, so that entrepreneurial life, um, she came down with something she wasn't feeling good. She at the morning of goes, "I'm going to need you to present." And so I got up there and I presented it, and that changed the course of the trajectory for me because then slowly but surely I had to grow.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn that this was a skill set that I was not strong at, that I could move the needle with myself, that I had to invest in me, and that I had to grow that confidence to do that, which has been fun. So in the same way that I'm doing that, I think of the Broadway actors that have and actresses that have to get up there on stage every night and do what they do because, yeah, I couldn't do it.
Well, you probably could. And I think that
Might not be good.
might not be good at first. And here's what I tell everybody. All my clients, I tell them, look, do podcasts, write a book, make videos. I mean, you said that you liked that the video I made where I said, instead of being omnipresent, just be present. Well, I might have made 1,000 videos up until that video. So,
Yeah.
The first 100 videos I made probably sucked. I know they suck, and I tell everybody your first 100 of whatever you're going to do is going to be terrible. But you're moving
Yeah.
that needle every single day to improve. You get to that 100th one, the 1,000th one, and now you're super comfortable. You can do it. It's just, and then you feel amazing, and people are like, "Wow, you did an awesome job." They don't see all the pain I put in behind the
They
scenes.
don't. You're 100% right. They don't. And I think that's part of, the one of my goals is to advocate making that difference, to just be today better than yesterday in a very small way,
Mm-hmm.
right? My that same person who put me up on the stage the very first time, when I got off, I went to her and I was like, "How did I do? Like, what do I need to do better? How do I need to change?" And she said to me something that is exactly what we're talking about here, which is, she goes, "Jason, if you're not growing, you're dying."
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to grow, we have to be comfortable making what one of my old bosses would say is, we have to make a lot of $5 mistakes to find the $1,000,000 gold.
Mm-hmm.
I think the problem is really twofold. One, we talk KPIs, we talk about these performance indicators, we talk about all the things we want. We're not really lasered in on the precise thing that we actually want to move the needle on. So if we don't know what exactly we want to move, then we try and do everything. Now we're omnipresent, to your point, and therefore nothing gets done. And now we feel failure, and we feel it in our DNA in a very real way that almost serves as a detractor,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, it almost means like, oh gosh, I don't want to do that again because I know how that feels. But in that one moment, maybe, and I'm not saying this is true or not, but Rob, maybe in that one moment, even you realize, like, hey, that one video that he just mentioned, that be present, like, that made a difference.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to move the needle with the world.
Well,
It just
yeah,
has to start to
and
move that needle, to your point.
and most of the things that I do, my message isn't for the world. It's for one person. And so when I'm making these videos, I'm thinking all I need to do is change the mindset of one person, and that moves the needle, and he changes and the next, and it's like a ripple effect,
Yeah.
and forget about trying to change the world. You can't do it. It's too big of a
No.
job for anyone, but you can change one person, and that one person can change one person. And
Yeah. I mean,
but
quick story real fast on that. Like, when we were at Disney, we were at the fireworks show. We met this amazing couple. They actually moved here from England. And we said to them, like, where do you live? And they told us, and I'm like, you actually live in our state. How is this possible? We ended up spending the next day with them. We were like, yeah, let's hang out. Let's do some rides together. We ended up going over to the Grand Floridian and checking out some of the lounges over there.
Hmm.
And at the end of it, I think we both sort of like, both of us, like my wife and I, his wife and him, we both almost at the same time were like, we should stay connected. Like,
Hmm.
and so we, to your point, we moved the needle with each other in this sort of now newfound friendship around a common passion point.
Hmm.
What I hope is that as startups build up, as more, and by the way, I love startups. I know people get nervous around them. I think they're incredible because they challenge the norms. They test us all to stay relevant, right?
Well,
If
I
you think
also,
about it, like as a data guy, people talk a lot about impressions,
hmm,
right? Oh, we have to measure our impressions to make sure that we're reaching. Well, are you even reaching the right eyeballs?
right. And
Right?
let's talk about that because I just had a client say, our impressions to clicks are way off. I said, yeah, but I'm looking at your website and it's not appealing. No one's going to
Right.
click, and your optimization, what you're telling Google, how you're doing your meta information is not telling Google where to rank it properly. So you're getting a whole bunch of people you don't want looking at your site and wasting time. So let's revamp some things so that one, Google understands where to rank you, you're getting the better audience, and those that are finally looking are going to click. It's not about
Right.
getting massive amounts of impressions because no one gives a crap. It's about getting that one person who's going to move the needle. And
Well, it is, so to give you a different lens on that, it is in my mind, relevance is the new reach,
yeah.
right? Because now it's, if you think about algorithms, and people have a love hate with algorithms, and
Oh, I hate
I
them.
get it. Like, see, and so I'm on the other side of that. Like, I really appreciate them because they prioritize for me the things that are meaningful and relevant to me. Now, I don't.
Right.
Now, to be fair, they can bury some of the things that I do
Oh,
care about.
and then they change the algorithm after you figured it out. And then you got to redo everything that you've just done to make your sites rank better. And it's like, okay, I've been dealing with this for 10 years now. And you guys keep screwing up every 6 months. It gets old.
I mean, Rob, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah. After a while, though, you're like, okay. So, but another thing though, we need to talk about is failure. Let's not be afraid to fail. And
No.
Disney is the prime example is with their Star Cruiser that lasted 18 months. They created this awesome immersive adventure going through Star Wars, and the media chastised it. They said it's never going to work. It's to the point where the audiences didn't show up. Now, it could have been the price point. Yeah, that was pretty high. But where else are you going to spend that kind of money to get a 2 or 3 day immersive adventure dealing with your favorite characters, dressed up as your favorite characters? And,
But so just like, so data, people go, numbers up good, numbers down bad, right?
mhm,
People are quick to say Star Cruiser success, Star Cruiser failure. And I don't know that I don't look at data that way, and I don't necessarily therefore see this scenario as a success or a failure either.
mhm,
And the reason is because when I think about data, when I think about how those numbers on a paper can tell a story, I think about it as like the sure things, and on the opposite end of that are the forgettable, never gonna gets, right? So the sure things are the ones that we're always going to show up for the Star Cruiser or always going to buy your brand or your product because whether you market to them or not, they're your base.
mhm,
On the other side, they're the never going to get. So they're your impressions, to your point, that are seeing this and going, yeah, that's not for me.
right.
And that's okay too. What I always look for is this sort of middle of the group, the persuadables, those that could enjoy it, those that might go and not enjoy it, but they've done it anyways, right? whether no matter what you think about with data, with Disney, with Star Cruiser, I mean, even no politics, but think about elections.
Mm-hmm.
Generally speaking, elections are made up of that persuadable voter in the middle that can move either way. That's
Right.
usually what changes the course of the trajectory.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I look at the Star Cruiser and I'm like, look, this thing won incredible design awards, tried and pushed the boundaries of what an experience could be, can be. Is it a success or a failure? I think it's neither. I think it
Well,
moved the
right.
needle. And the question now is, where do they go from here? What learnings did they take from it to actually then act upon?
Yeah. Well,
Just like with anything else in
yeah.
data, where you go, great, numbers are down. What are you going to do about it?
Well,
So what?
right.
Now what?
I think because Disney has this awesome data machine, they could have said, okay, let's design a marketing campaign just for people we know that make a certain amount of money, that visited our parks many times, they've done this, this, and this, and offer them a catered service to the Star Cruiser, and it's only exclusive to them. But no, they did this mass marketing to the whole world, and I think had they marketed it differently, they would have had a better viable product.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. One of the areas where I think it's tough is if you think about the parks, they're always sort of trying to, Walt many, many years ago started off as the parks are never complete. They're always
Right.
evolving. They're always changing, right? And over time they have. They've
Mm-hmm.
either enhanced or added on new rides. Tron is a great example. Quite frankly, Star Cruiser was an addition. The problem that I think what I've sort of seen and what I even feel is that it would not evolve, or it didn't seem to evolve or have a pathway to evolve over time.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, then even if you got into it and you did it once, I think the opportunities for that sort of incremental, keep going back, keep seeing it, is probably the heartbeat of where things kind of got hit with resistance, because you're like, cool, I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will tell you, I mean, how many times have I ridden some of these rides? Dozens, hundreds, probably more than I care to admit. How many chocolate bananas? I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But each one of them had a slightly different sort of experience to it every time, either because of the person I was with and all that. I think it got to the point where just people couldn't find a pathway then by, which they would say, hey, yeah, let's go back, other than that sort of very small niche diehard group. So I think from a storytelling perspective, it had a ton of opportunity.
Yeah.
But again, my big thing is based on the data. Where do they take that data and go, cool, how do we learn from this? What do we do next? Because to me, not to be cheesy and punny, but that's what's going to be the great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's all data is, if you think about it, right? The data today informs what we do tomorrow, if we do it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It tells us what works and what doesn't work, which is why, again, I don't see data as good or bad. I see it as, is the consumer changing? Have I, as a consumer, changed in every aspect of my life? The things that I
Yeah.
prioritize, the things that I value, how I apply those values to the brands I consider, the influencers that I follow.
Mm-hmm.
It all is an ever
But
evolving thing.
and the thing is, I think there could be a lot more built into for all those who have never taken or gone to Disney. You go to My Disney Experience and you plug in all your information, but they should be able to cater it. If they ask, they've never asked me what my favorite ride is. It's Pirates of the Caribbean. I go there every time. I mean, I missed a ride, rid the thing, 100 times, but I just, and Pirates of the Caribbean on a night that does Mickey's Not So Scary is awesome because they got extra characters. It's just fantastic.
Have not done that yet. I might
But
add that to the list.
the
Do you remember real quickly when you first went on that ride, there was like the fog that would used to drop down and showed the character through the fog at the very beginning of the ride? I
No,
might be making
I,
that up.
I,
I
I,
really
I
remember
think
it.
they,
It
I
was
think
right
they
when you heard the
changed that.
dead men tell no,
Yeah,
and I was like, oh, and now it's not there anymore. And I'm like,
yeah,
wait, it's
yeah,
changed.
I know that they have it at one of the parks, Disneyland, maybe different.
So interesting story. I often wonder like why the some of the like Haunted Mansion in California gets the overlay during Christmas time or the holidays.
It becomes
Um, do you know why? Do you know why certain things get overlaid out there more than in Florida?
no.
So word is, based on when I asked a number of different cast, the reason is that Disneyland tends to be repeat local people.
Mm.
Florida is overwhelmingly people that go, probably to your point earlier, once or twice in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So to take down sort of a uh, hero ride like a Pirates, like a Haunted Mansion, for what, like 6 days to do the turnover to a particular scene would mean that every guest in that 6 day period potentially would miss out on their once in a lifetime opportunity there. So that's why they don't do it allegedly. I thought that was fascinating.
Well, the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland is probably one of my favorite. Um,
Ooh,
yeah, and they don't
that
have it.
that
They don't have it in the Florida park, so
not yet.
not yet. But
It'll get there.
I think if they replaced the dinosaur ride with Indiana Jones, it would work.
Listen, I'm going to start petitioning to bring back Mr. Toad to Florida. I'm just saying. No, look, I mean, I think at the end of the day, though, no matter how you do this, maybe the one thing that's really important to me is, making a difference. And I talked about that. I think how you do that in your life is really important. From whether it's Jason, data person or entrepreneur, how do you show up and make a difference?
Mhm.
I've tried different things along the way. None of them, again, positive or negative. That's really not the case. But like one of the things that made a profound impact on me, probably about 7 years ago, I decided I was going to start volunteering and be a guardian ad litem to a court system for children that were abused and neglected. Um, you want to talk about a tough life. Think about these children whose parents have substance abuse issues or alcoholism or things that are preventing them from taking care of their loved precious children, and then put yourself in the shoes of having to make a difference by making the decision of, do you recommend trying to reunify this child with a parent, or do you try and place them somewhere else, knowing that the decision and the recommendations that you're going to make will fundamentally change tomorrow?
Mhm.
And that is incredibly humbling to
Mhm.
to know that you have to make the right call. You have to feel really good about that decision. And I remember distinctly my first case. The child had come into custody on Christmas Eve, and you only have a certain number of days to get before a judge in that first time. And I'm thinking to myself, this is my first case, but it fundamentally helped me grow. It helped me change. It helped evolve the way I think about a lot of things. Now, even when I go to Disney, some simple acts
Mhm.
of when you're, passing a cast member, acknowledging them. It is the most fundamentally basic thing that you can do. No different than getting on an airplane when the flight attendants say, "Welcome aboard."
Mhm.
And yet, if you watch so often, to your point of being omnipresent, people are so distracted, they'll board the plane, they'll turn down the aisle, and they'll hear it. They won't acknowledge that flight attendant. They'll
Mhm.
walk past that cast member and not acknowledge them.
Yeah.
Imagine how that must. Imagine now. Put yourself in their shoes. Just like I had to put myself in the shoes of this young child that I was trying to advocate for, and going, you know, how does that make you feel?
Mhm.
Or can we just, to your point, stop, pause for a minute, and be present in that one moment, knowing that you said it. You don't create these podcasts to move the world. You create them for one person.
Mm-hmm.
Then you know what? Maybe if I may, and I don't know if this has been done on number 245, we're going to take a challenge here. But maybe I challenge you, challenge myself, and challenge all of the people that listen to this. Do just one thing to make a difference with somebody else, right? It's the most fundamental element of pass it on, pay it forward, right? It doesn't have to be big. It can be very small. In fact, quite frankly, the smallest things will make the difference. The smallest things will move the needle if you make it a priority. And I am even committing to you, Rob. I will report back to you on the things that I do in the days, weeks, and months ahead, right, to live up to that promise, because I'm here today to commit to doing that. Yeah. I think we need more people to do that. So I'm challenging you to help me move this needle one more person forward, and I'm challenging all of the people listening and watching as well.
And for all those out there that are planning a trip to Disney, what I want you to do if you get there, pay attention to all the employees, because they all have name tags. They all have on their name tag, it usually says the state that they're from or the city. And I always look out for those that are from Pennsylvania, and I strike up a conversation, because every single one of those employees is looking forward to meeting somebody, to having a conversation, even if it's just 2 minutes. They live for that. And I've noticed that every single employee who does not get asked feels let down. And yeah, if you can spark their day just as much as they're sparking yours, your enjoyment in the park is going to be so much better.
Yeah, and it's weird, right? Like, people say pixie dust is the word. When I go there, I have custom little pins, wristlets, if you will, sometimes, that I'll give out to cast members that either have done something, really nice to me, been really above and beyond for me, or something that I've seen, right? So maybe it's the family in front of me or the family behind me, like whatever may be going on. And I expanded that this year to have pins just for cast members, and now I have pins just for other people. And I will tell you, again, you want to talk about making a difference. You watch, to your point, as something as simple as going, "Hey, thanks for that," and handing them this dollar pin, $1.10 pin. Many of them you can see their eyes glazing up. You can see them welling up there, and trying to hold back tears. And it's weird, because in the same vein, when I was at Disney just last weekend, this couple that I was telling you about, they had asked me early on, what's one of my favorite movies? And I had joked with them in a Disney movie, and I said, Zootopia, clearly. And I told them I really love the officer who's at the front desk when Officer Hobbs comes in and he's got the box of donuts with him. Little did I realize that they were pin collectors, and they actually had that character on a pin. And at the end of the night, as we were walking away, they said, "Hey, by the way, we want you to have this." And that simple gesture, I was just floored. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm about to cry, right? Because the simple act of kindness moved the needle for me. And I was like, if this is how I feel now, for the first time, I know how other people feel when they get pixie dusted. And it's a great feeling. It really is. We can make a difference.
Disney is their catchphrase or their motto is the magical place, and I get that. But when you go there, don't expect it to be so. You have to bring the magic. It's up to the individual. You get what you receive. So if you're going to go in there with oh my God, this vacation cost me so much money. It's just so much work. I've been walking 7 miles a day. I got on 4 rides. That's the wrong attitude. You're not going to walk away with any magic. So,
Right.
um,
Well, but isn't that true about life?
yeah.
Isn't that true about every startup? Isn't that true about everything that we do? You get out what you put in.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put out all of that, you will get it back. If you
Mm-hmm.
put out half of that, you might get half of it back. You might not. But what I do know is if you put out nothing other than sort of this negativity that's going to permeate through everything to the point that you're unhappy, you will never find that happiness.
Yeah.
And I think if the pandemic taught my wife and I anything, it's, we can talk here about mental health, we can talk about prioritizing, we can talk about equality, we can talk about all of that. But if there's one thing that we learned, it's about prioritizing happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a wonderful feeling. But guess what, Rob? It takes work.
Oh yeah.
I mean, do you think every day we all wake up intending to be, bad people? No. Well, guess what? We don't all wake up trying to be, automatically happy either. Everybody's got sort of the vices that hold us back. Our challenge, I believe, is to push past those with priority and strategic precision to say, how do we change? How do we move this needle forward in a very real way? And that takes work. But that's why I've challenged you. That's why I've challenged your viewers. Like, we can all do it if we just do one thing.
So where can the viewers and the listeners, the audience, where can they find you? Where do they go?
Yeah. So LinkedIn is where I'm at. You'll notice I've got a nice little emoticon guy up there. And you'll also know it because it says, I love Disney. I'm always at Disney. To your point, move the needle. So yeah, LinkedIn, I believe it's Jason Clough with the slash in there. And look, feel free to reach out to me. I'm that type of guy that, for me, making the difference is even something as simple as I've been reading a lot about layoffs going on across tech companies. Disney's had their share. Everybody's been hit with layoffs, right? So how hard is it to click share on somebody who you don't know, but who's been laid off?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't you want the same thing done for you? Right? So if you come and you connect with me, know that you're going to see a lot of that, because that's part of moving the needle in my life right now, is helping other people who need that help stand up, get back on their feet, get back to doing what they love to do. I'm fortunate. I have been part of layoffs. I am not in that mode right now. So I understand at a very deep level what that feels like. It is not a good feeling. And let
No.
me tell you, waking up and being positive when that's happened is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And yet, sharing it, passing it along, looking at somebody's resume and offering them a different viewpoint, taking 10 minutes out of your life to try and make that difference, I think is really important.
I
But
mean,
if you're out
I,
there and you're currently out of work and you need that extra boost, look, my connections out there can somehow get you hired again. That is a great, big, beautiful tomorrow
I
for you.
I've been a business owner for 28 years, but in the early 90s, I went through a string of layoffs, and it's tough. I was newly married, had kids, and it was very stressful.
Well, and you
Uh,
question everything.
yeah,
Was it my
and that was
fault? Did I do
that
something
was
wrong? And you're like, no, you did nothing wrong.
that was one of the reasons I started this. I started a prior business and then had that for many, many years, and then sold that and went full time doing what I'm doing now. But yeah, it can be a heartache for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So,
And the great news is that people will tell you in the moment that the next best thing is just like a door away. You just got to find the right door and walk through it. And it's really hard in the moment to believe that. And that's why taking that moment as somebody who's been there but not in that boat right now is really important, because sometimes just putting one foot in front of the other to get there does require support.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it comes in the most oddest of forms or the most random of places. No different than some of the connections that you can make at the parks, the connections that you can make at grocery stores. You just don't know unless you are present.
Mm-hmm. Well, there you go, people. We'll see you guys on the next episode. Adios.
Thanks, Rob.